Hello everyone, Derek here again with another My Thoughts video game review. Today I am talking about the game, let me grab it here, Infinite Undiscovery, which is a game for the Xbox 360. It's actually an exclusive RPG, one of the few exclusive RPGs on the 360. And it's an action RPG. It's got a lot of it's all done in real-time combat. And the game is pretty good. That's kind of where I'm at with it. It's sort of a middle-of-the-road game. The problem with it is that I don't know that I've ever seen a game that so often shoots itself in the foot. Because there are so many things it does well, but for everything it does well, there are a couple of other just really weird and awkward design decisions that they've made that drag the whole experience down. So my overall recommendation is try it if you are an RPG fan, but there are a lot of other games you should play first. There are a lot of other games that are better that you probably would want to pick up first, but if you're interested in sort of a hacky-slashy action role-playing game, give it a whirl because it's got some stuff in it. So let's talk a little bit about it. So in the game, the story is that you are the character Capel, and you start off in a prison, and it turns out that you happen to look exactly like the leader of this revolutionary group. Now what this revolutionary group is doing is there are some people in the world that are actually putting these giant chains on the moon to try to draw power from the moon. But when they do that, the area on the Earth where the chain is connected is withering away and dying, and it's just really wreaking havoc on the entire world. So this revolutionary group is trying to break the chains that are going to the moon, trying to stop these people from doing this. And you just happen to look exactly like their leader. So in the prison, you're actually getting broken out from jail by members of this resistance group that think you are their leader. They don't realize they're breaking out the wrong person. And so the game goes on from there where you get wrapped up in this story and with these people, and it kind of just goes from there. And there's a lot of, actually some really interesting parts of the story. I thought it was kind of an interesting story. I liked a lot of the characters, and there were a lot of things about that to like. The story wasn't stellar, it wasn't the greatest thing I'd ever seen, but it was definitely good, it wasn't bad, and it had some really good moments. So I think overall the story is solid. But this is definitely more of a gameplay game than a story game. I wouldn't come to this game for the story, it's more of a gameplay kind of thing that really would draw you in. So one thing I will say though about the story and the characters, it's definitely an early 360 game. It definitely is, and you can feel that age because the graphics are a little rough, especially on some of the secondary characters. Most of the main characters look pretty good, but a lot of the secondary characters that you have look a little rough. Again, that's just the age. You can't really hold that against it. But some of them are really creepy. Some of them, especially, there are these two little kids that are in your party that just have these creepy dead eyes. I don't know, I never used them. I just tried to ignore that they were even there because they just freaked me out. I did not like that at all. Also, some of the voice acting for the secondary characters is pretty bad. Your main characters are generally pretty good, but my goodness, some of the secondary characters are rough. So, production value, again, middle of the road. Like I said, this game's very mediocre, so you're going to be hearing this a lot. Has some good and has some bad. But into the gameplay. So in the game, and this is where I feel like the game kind of shoots itself in the foot. Within the gameplay part. It's not really in the storyline or anything like that, it's the gameplay. So the game is in real time. It's an action sort of RPG. And you're playing with a group of people, but you only control the main character, the other ones are controlled by AI, which generally is fine. And the AI, for the most part, works pretty well. The problems that I have with the game are, the first thing is that the particle effects and the flashy stuff happening on screen is honestly just too much. I'm sure it was a new video game system, they want to show off what it can do, and they do, but it really makes it sometimes very difficult to see what's going on in battle. It's hard to tell even which character you're fighting against because there's so much junk on the screen and flashing lights and spells and effects and all of this stuff. And it really does make it difficult. The only sort of defensive move that you have is a parry. This game really could use a dodge button. If it had a dodge, it would have made it so much better. But it has a parry. The problem is the parry has to be hit, the parry button has to be hit at the exact right moment while the enemy is attacking you in order for it to work. I played through the entire game, I never got it to work once. I could never get the timing down right. And part of that is because there's so much stuff on the screen. It's hard to tell, to watch that enemy to see how they're telegraphing that move. And so it really, again, sounded like a good idea on paper, I'm sure, when they're like, yes, let's just do all this stuff and make everything look great. But in reality, it just didn't work. The other part that I find is frustrating in the battles is that the item screen and the map screen and everything pretty much that you would use does not pause the gameplay itself. So if you want to look at your items, you open up a menu and everything else in the world is still going on. And you can still see it, but you can't control your character anymore because now your directional button is moving the cursor instead of your character. And you know, so you're pretty much just sitting exposed. And the other part is, I really got frustrated with the items because when you go to the item screen, so first of all, you're already having to deal with the fact that, okay, I've got to find a way to get away from the heat of the battle to get an item, to use it, and without getting killed. But when you go to the item screen, the description of the item is the flavor text. So it's like, oh, this herb was found in this region and it grows here. You know, it doesn't tell you what you need to know. And because they're doing this, you need to be able to look at a glance and see what it is. See how much, you know, if it's a healing item, how much it's going to heal, or if it revives, or whatever it does. And none of the items have any, the names of the items don't give you any hints. It's all like red berries and white berries and stuff. It doesn't tell you revival item or a heal or, you know, a stronger heal or anything like that. It's just, it's all flavor text. Now you can push a button when you're in the item screen to have it switch over to the actual stats of the items and the actual description of what they do, but that's an extra button press. And you're already in the middle of everything trying to do this as quickly and as efficiently as possible because you are a sitting duck while you're doing this. To me, that was just so frustrating, and it made using items extremely tedious and extremely difficult. Your AI partners will use items, but that's definitely a problem because what I would find is they would always go to the most powerful healing items, and those might be the rare and expensive ones, and it may not be something that would require using a really strong healing item. It may have been one that, you know, a smaller healing item would have worked just fine, but they always go to the strong one. So I go into the item thing, I tell them, basically you can tell the system to not have your AI partners use certain items, so I would turn off all of the strongest items. But then when you need them to use it, then you're again having to fumble through the menu in the middle of combat to try to turn it back on if you're in the thick of things and you actually do need them to start using those items. So the whole thing was just sort of a clunky mess. It was just so tedious and so difficult to use, and really again brought down the gameplay and made using items difficult. And I understand where they're coming from because I know there's always that running joke in Skyrim or Fallout where you're pausing the game and then taking like 60 potions or whatever and then right back in the middle of it, and it's all kind of breaks the illusion of reality. But you know, the problem is you have to make the decision sometimes, okay, this is not going to be realistic, but is it going to be fun? And if you're doing something that is so committed to the realism of what's happening in the game, but it drags down the fun of the game, I feel like that's probably the wrong choice. Because you want to do everything, you make every decision in the design of a game to increase the fun. That's the bottom line. It needs to be fun. And I feel like in here, they made the choice to try to make it more realistic and ended up dragging down the experience. And in my opinion, that was the wrong decision to make. And people can disagree with that, and I'm sure people do. I'm sure the game designers do. But that, in my take on it, is that was the wrong choice because it drug it down too much. The other part, too, that's kind of frustrating with the AI partners is that you can give them overall instructions, but you cannot give each individual character instructions. And I really wish that you could have, because I would have set certain characters in certain fights to not use their special abilities. I had one guy who would use the strongest attack on every monster he saw until he ran out of mana, or MP, or whatever they call it in the game. He would do that until he was spent. And it didn't matter how strong the enemy was, he was using everything he had. And I don't have, if I had had the choice, I would have said, okay, don't do that until we got to a boss, because when we get to a boss, and he would be spent. He wouldn't have any strong attacks to use anymore. But if I set it, but my only option is to set everybody to don't use anything. And then your healers and your magic users are just sitting there whacking on something with a bamboo pole. I mean, they're not going to do any good. So that really stinks. And it just needed to have that extra level of customizability in the AI to make the game work a lot better. The other part that's frustrating is where you change that. Once you die, you have a few moments where one of your party members can use a revival spell or revival item to bring you back up. The problem is, you can't change their AI once you're dead. Once you're dead, you just sit back and watch and hope and pray that something good happens. If you have it set to all-out attack, or like the big, strong, focus energy on fighting and killing this one thing, they'll never use a healing item. They'll never do it because their AI says to just focus everything on attack. Even though you're dead, and you can't change it. You can't change that once you're down. So what ended up happening to me, I didn't use it at all. I just set everybody to free attacks, you do whatever you want, and let the cards fall where they may. And that meant that my guy was spent by the time we got to boss fights, but it kept me from... Otherwise, the only option is anytime I went down, I was dead for good. If I just happened to pick the wrong thing, and that would just frustrated me too much. So I feel like that was a horribly wasted opportunity to really have some fun with that system. But they didn't do it by not letting you customize each individual one, and then also by not letting you change things once you were down. I like the fact that it wasn't an automatic game over when you were dead. That was good. But you still needed to be able to customize that a little bit more. So that was kind of frustrating. But apart from all that, so here I'm saying all of these negative things, all of these horrible negative things, the game is fun. I mean, there is a lot of fun to be had in the game. It is not a bad game. It is just a middle-of-the-road game. It's a mediocre game. It's got a lot of problems, a lot of really goofy, awkward things that they did, but it is a lot of fun. There are some other, issues and annoyances, but I feel like I've kind of harped on that enough. I don't want to get into that even more about the way your party members are set up and things. There's a lot of stuff that can be leveled against this. However, I did finish the game. Generally, if I hate a game, I don't finish it. That's why you don't see a lot of reviews on here of me just tearing apart a game, because most of the time I just don't finish it, and then I don't like to do a review unless I finish the game. So that's why most of my reviews tend to be somewhat positive. So with this, I enjoyed the game enough to finish it. I had a lot of fun with it, and when it was good, it was really good. When the combat was on and things, it could be a lot of fun. There was a lot of action going on and some really fun things. The story was fun. The world was, and for as many awkward issues with some of the character designs and graphics, the environment graphics were very pretty. It was a very good looking game. I mean, it was, as far as like the way that it was designed and the art style, the monster design, a lot of, repeated monsters, but still the ones that were there were pretty cool. It was fun. I really enjoyed the game. So even though I'm kind of harping on some of the negativity and the problems I had with it, it still ultimately was fun. And so I think, as far as my recommendation goes, I say yes, I would recommend it, but there are other games you should play first. There are other games out there that are better, that you're going to have more fun with. If you're in the situation where you can just afford one game or you only have time to play one game, this probably isn't the one to play. But if you played a lot of other games and you're kind of looking for something new or different, have at it. It is a lot of fun and you'll have a good time with it. You just have to kind of look past some of the negative issues with it. Sorry about that. I had a phone call that came through that I had to take, so I had to take a little pause there. But the last thing I wanted to mention about the game is the title. Everybody that does a review of this game kind of talks about the title because it is dumb. It really is. When you kind of come down to it, it's just dumb. It doesn't, and maybe in Japanese or something it has a different translation or it makes a little bit more sense. But in English, at least, Infinite Undiscovery doesn't really mean anything. And I kept thinking as I was playing the game that it would, like maybe there would be something, even just within the world of the game, where it had something, but nothing. I mean, this was just, it has absolutely nothing to do with the story at all. So, kind of a weird thing, but again, don't let that throw you off, although, like I said, every review I've ever seen, it does at least mention that it's kind of an awkward title. I mean, I guess it sounds kind of neat, but it doesn't really have any meaning, so... Again, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching my videos. I really appreciate every view that I get, every comment that I get. It means a lot to me, and it really is a lot of fun to do these, and I appreciate it so much. So thanks as always for watching.